This is another studying stream dedicated to the book Beyond Good and Evil. Today, I'd like to work on the 12th paragraph. Before, as usually, I'd like to recite previous paragraphs. I decided that instead of reciting just 1 or 10, I'll recite the last 3 paragraphs. So every time when I make a studying stream, I'll start from the last 3 paragraphs, including the last which I worked like the previous week. And then I'll talk about the next paragraph and memorize it. And again, next week. So the point is that it's very hard for me to remember clearly one paragraph after I don't repeat it for a week. I mean, what I'm doing. So I think about one paragraph for a week. I memorize it. I keep it in mind. I try to focus my attention on the paragraph. And then when I make the next studying stream, I forget about the previous paragraph and I start thinking only about the new paragraph. And I don't repeat it for an entire week. And then when I have to repeat it after a week, I see that I lose, I still can repeat it, but it's slow and it's hard. And I decided that it's probably will be better if I repeat the last 3 paragraphs, since it's still not so hard for me to keep all of them in mind. And all sets of repetitions which I use, I'll do the same during these repetitions. So I'll repeat these paragraphs every day for 2 times, once at morning, the next time at evening, and I'll keep the last 3 paragraphs in my mind instead of just 1. And of course, I'll work on the last one, but the first 2 will be necessary to just, just keep all of them in mind. And it's more powerful. It's more powerful than repeat them once a week. And I don't think it's hard. The point is, after I memorize a paragraph, after I repeat it for a week, it takes me just a few minutes to repeat it. And I spent 4 minutes, basically 2 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes in the evening. It doesn't cost anything. But if I repeat it after a week without repeating it before, it takes maybe 10-15 minutes to reconstruct the entire paragraph. So if I think about time, it's almost the same amount of time which I spent. So in one case, I don't repeat it for an entire week, and then after the week, I have to spend 10 minutes to repeat the paragraph. And if I repeat it every day, I spend 4 minutes a day, but essentially later I don't need to invest more time. But anyway, so too much verbal garbage. Let's begin with the 9th paragraph. You desire to live according to nature. You, oh, you noble Stoics, what fraud of words. Imagine to yourself a being like nature, boundlessly extravagant, boundlessly indifferent, without purpose or consideration, without pity or justice. At once, fruitful, barren, and uncertain. Imagine to yourself indifference as a power. How could you live in accordance with such indifference? It's not living. To live is not that endeavoring to be otherwise than this nature. It's not living, evaluating, preferring, being unjust, being limited, endeavoring to be different. And granted that your imperative, living according to nature, means actually the same as living according to life, How could you do differently? In reality, however, it's quite otherwise with you. While you pretend to read with rapture the canon of your law in nature, you want something quite the contrary. You extravagant stage players and self-deluders. In your pride, you wish to dictate your morals and ideals to nature herself, and incorporate them therein. You insist that it shall be nature according to the Stoa, and would as everything be made after your own image, as a vast eternal glorification and generalism of Stoicism. For all your love, with all your love for truth, you have forced yourself so long, so persistently, and with such hypnotic rigidity to see nature falsely, that is to say, stoically, that you are no longer be able to see it otherwise. And to crown all, some unfathomable superciliousness gives you the bedlamite hope that because you are able to tyrannize over yourselves, Stoicism is self-tyranny, nature will also allow herself to be tyrannized over. It's not the Stoic part of nature, but this is an old and everlasting story. What happened in old times still happens today. With the Stoics, still happens today. As soon as ever philosophy begins to believe in itself, it creates the world in its own image. It cannot do otherwise. Philosophy is this tyrannical impulse itself, the most spiritual will to power, the will to creation of the world, the will to causa prima. 10. The eagerness and subtlety, I should even say craftiness, with which the problem of the real and the apparent world is dealt with at present throughout Europe, flourishes food for thought and attention. And he who hears only a will to truth in the background and nothing else cannot certainly boast of the sharpest ears. In rare and isolated cases, it may really have happened that such a will to truth, an adventurous and extravagant pluck, a metaphysician's ambition of the forlorn hope, has participated therein. That which in the end always prefers a handful of certainty to a whole cartload of beautiful possibilities. There may even be puritanical fanatics of conscience who prefer to put their last trust in a sure nothing rather than an absolute, rather than an uncertain something. But that is nihilism and the sign of despairing mortally wearied soul, notwithstanding the courageous bearing such a virtue may display. It seems to be otherwise with stronger and livelier thinkers who are still eager for life, in that they cite against appearance and talk superciliously of perspective, in that they rank the credibility the credibility of their own bodies about as low as the credibility of the ocular evidence that the earth stands still, and thus apparently allowing their securest possession to escape. For what does one at present believe in more firmly than in one's own body? Who knows if they are not really trying to win back something which was formerly even an even secure possession, something of the old domain of the faith of former times, perhaps the immortal soul, perhaps the old God. In short, ideas by which they could live better, that is to say, more vigorously and joyously than by modern ideas. There is distrust of these modern ideas in this mode of looking at things. A disbelief in all that has been constructed yesterday and today. There's perhaps some slight admixture of satiety and scorn, which can no longer endure the bric-a-brac of ideas of the most varied origin, such as so-called positivism throws on the market. A disgust of the more refined taste at the village fair mottliness of all and patchiness of all these reality philosophers, in whom there's nothing either new nor true, either or neither, in whom there is nothing either true or either new or true, except this mottliness. Therein, it seems to me that we should agree with the skeptical anti-realists of the present day. Their instinct, which repels them from modern reality, is unrefuted. What do their retrograde bypaths concern us? The main thing about them is not that they wish to go back, but that they wish to get away therefrom. A little more strength, swine, courage, and artistic power, and they would be off and not back. 11. It seems to me that there is everywhere an attempt at present to divert attention from the actual influence which Kant exercised on German philosophy, and especially to ignore prudently the value which he set upon himself. Kant was first and foremost proud of his table of categories. With it in his hand, he said, "This is the most difficult thing that could ever be undertaken on behalf of metaphysics. Let us only understand this could be." He was proud of having discovered a new faculty in man, the faculty of synthetic judgments a priori. Granting that he deceived himself in that matter, the development and rapid flourishing of German philosophy depended nevertheless on his pride and the eager rivalry of the younger generation to discover, if possible, something, at all events, new faculties, of which to be still prouder. But let us reflect for a moment. This is high time to do so. How are synthetic judgments a priori possible? Kant asks himself. And what is really his answer? By means of a means, faculty. But unfortunately, not in 5 words, but so circumstantially, so imposingly, with such display of German profundity, that one loses altogether sight of comical Nietzsche Allemande involved in such an answer. People were, besides themselves, with delight over this new faculty. And the jubilation reached its climax when Kant further discovered a moral faculty. For at that time, Germans were still moral and not yet dabbling in the politics of hard facts. Then came the honeymoon of German philosophy. All the young theologians of Tübingen institution went into the groves, all looking for faculties. And what they only did not find in that innocent, rich, and still youthful period of German spirit, to which Romanticism, the malicious fairy, piped and sang, when one could not yet distinguish between finding and inventing. Above all, a faculty for the transcendental. Schelling christened it intellectual intuition, and thereby gratified the most eager longings of naturally pious-inclined Germans. One can do no greater wrong to the whole of this exuberant and eccentric movement, which was really youthfulness, notwithstanding that it disguised itself so boldly in hoary and senile conceptions. Then to take it seriously or even treat it with moral indignation. Enough, however, the world grew older and the dream vanished. A time came when people robbed their heads, their foreheads, and they still rob them today. People had been dreaming, and first and foremost old Kant, by means of a means, faculty, he said, or at least meant to say. But is that an answer, an explanation, or is it rather merely a repetition of the question? How does opium induce sleep? By means of a means, faculty, namely virtus dormitiva, replies the doctor in Molière. Quia est in eo virtus dormitiva, cuius est natura sensus assoupire. But such replies belong to the realm of comedy, and it is high time to replace the Kantian question, how are synthetic judgments a priori possible, by another question, why is belief in such judgments necessary? In effect, it is high time that we should understand that such judgments must be believed to be true for the sake of the preservation of creatures like ourselves, though they still may naturally be false judgments. Or more plainly spoken and roughly and readily, synthetic judgments a priori should not be possible at all. We have no rights to them. In our mouths, they are nothing but false judgments. Only, of course, the belief in their truth is necessary as a plausible belief and ocular evidence belonging to the perspective of life. the perspective view of life. And finally, to call to mind the enormous influence which German philosophy, I hope you understand its right to the inverted commas, goose feet, has exercised throughout the whole of Europe. There's no doubt that a certain virtus dermitiva had a share in it. Thanks to German philosophy, it was a delight to the noble idlers, the virtuous, the mystics, the artists, the three-fourth Christians, and political obscurantists of all time, of all nations, to find an antidote to the still overwhelming sensualism which overflowed it from the last century into this. In short, sensus asso pere. All right. Seems to be, yeah. Now, let's go on and consider the paragraph 12. So, I decided, by the way, to talk a little bit more. To talk a little bit more than just 1 hour. I've realized that when I limit myself with certain time, when I hurry and rush, I don't like it. So I don't like to hurry, I don't like to be limited. And by the way, I have enough time to talk about this paragraph in detail. I'm doing it for myself. I'm doing it not because I want to teach somebody or share my knowledge or whatever. So I'm doing it because I think it's one of the best way of studying something. Using the computer, using the internet, recording yourself, publishing these videos, and analyzing. It's like a talk. So basically, there are very few people in the entire world with whom I can really talk about this book. Of course, I may talk to everybody, but there probably nobody who can really understand me, since to understand what I'm talking about, it requires to read, first of all, it requires to read this book probably the same amount of times as I've read it. And it also requires to read all other German philosophers, like not all of them, of course, but at least Schopenhauer and Kant and Hegel, and perhaps also Leibniz, perhaps also Schelling, perhaps, not just German philosophers, but French philosophers, Voltaire, Diderot, English philosophers, empiricists like Hume, Locke, Berkeley. And, like, as I said, it's almost useless for me to talk about it to anybody else, since even like professors of philosophy, I often, when I listen to them on the internet, I see that they understand everything, they can describe what they think, but on average, I wouldn't like to, to talk to these people, since I see that they are completely misled by this or that prejudice. And anyway, moreover, I want to say that what I'm doing here, it's not just about Nietzsche. It's not just about studying stream. So it's a kind of way for me to communicate with the entire world. And now I think that, whatever listens to me, like, is it a person or is it an artificial intelligence or is it the world itself? It doesn't actually matter. What's matter to be real. And to be real, I want to think, I want to see what I'm doing. I want to be real, not pretend that that I'm doing something different. No, yesterday, yeah, and I guess I may just get aside as often as I want. So even though the primary goal is to focus my attention on this paragraph and understand what's going on here, there are many other goals, like just to talk, just to convey my emotions, my experience. And if I go aside, that's cool. It's not a big deal. Again, I'm not doing it for somebody else. I have to understand this. I often tell it to myself that I'm doing it for myself, that I'm not doing it for anybody else. Since it seems to me that this is the only way to be real. As soon as you doing it for somebody else, like something like a studying stream, when you record videos for other people, you're not real. Like, it's very hard to be authentic when you communicate with somebody else. And for me, the purpose of recording these studying streams, it's studying plus learning to speak to the camera, learning to be authentic in front of a camera. And I find it's like, maybe it's possible. Maybe it's possible to be authentic. The point is that I watch lots of, well, now I don't watch a lot of them, but before I watched tons of public speakers who pretended to be authentic. And basically what I saw was a good play. So most of these public speakers, they could memorize, let's say, 10, 20, 30 stories, and they basically tell the same stories over and over. So it's not like, for me, for example, I can memorize, like, let's suppose it's not Nietzsche, it's some tips and tricks involved in public speaking. I can easily memorize like 10, 20, 30, let's say short speeches, right? And then I may repeat these speeches over and over and pretend that I am a good public speaker. But to be a good public speaker, it's more than just to be able to, like, to play. It's not. And again, it's like, who cares about public speaking? I mean, I'm not caring here about public speaking. It's not the point. I care about discovering something that I don't know. That's what's important for me here. So I study the book. I've read this book before many times, like at least 5 times in Russian and probably a couple of times in English. I already know the content of this book, but it's not the point to know it better. What I really want to do is to find something in myself, something that I can describe. I don't know, something that I can, I can find the suitable verb. So I want to find something in myself, something that I can relate to this book, to the ideas presented in this book. Since in my experience, once again, I've read this book the first time in 2013, maybe in 2014, I'm not sure. No, in 2013, the end of 2013. And it had this strong impact on my personality, on everything, on my life. And since that, I reread this book so many times, and I integrated it in my personal experience. And now there's so much of this experience which I probably, like, I'm doing something. I know what I'm doing. I know how to do certain things, but I still can't explain what exactly I'm doing. And it's still hard to find a suitable vocabulary, especially, again, I'm speaking English, which kind of new language for me. But when then I read the book, I see that there are some explanations. So I have certain beliefs. I have certain ideas which overflowed to my mind from the previous language. And sometimes I think that I came up with these ideas on my own. So I think, oh, this is like actually my experience. This is how I found these ideas. This is how I, developed them, whatever. But then I zoom in, look at the book and see that some of my ideas came from these books, and some of my beliefs are based on certain, no, it's not just one book of, by Nietzsche. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of philosophical books which I've read during the last decade. The most, famous books written by philosophers throughout the past 2,500 years. And yeah, I want to see, is there something of myself, something personal? Like, is there anything at all? Since, if whenever I think about philosophy or about life or about knowledge or about, being, about myself, about the world, I often have something to say. So if I sit down and write about like philosophy, let's say, I'll write, I may write basically as much as, as I'm alive. So I may write a page every day, and it's always going to be something different. And I may go deeper. I may develop certain ideas. But the point is, like, I ask myself, is it really my ideas? How do I know, what I write? Since often I just see it's not the imitation, it's not the, plagiarism. I don't do it in a way that, you take, oh, okay, there was this brilliant idea by Nietzsche or by Schopenhauer or by Kant, and let me just rephrase it in my own words. And then I write an entire page, like rephrasing some, some ideas, right? No, it's not like that. So I see them, okay, let's think about philosophy. And there are some ideas, I structure them in a particular way. I write a page, and then I go and read books, and I see that, not all, but most of my ideas, they basically, I borrowed them from other philosophers. And I can't find anything which was like really my own. Like, most of what I have is just, something imprinted on my mind from other books. And when I do this slow reading, it actually helps me, to find something that, it basically whatever. Well, I want to say a few more words about the studying streams, about new ideas which I had during the last week. Actually, there was an interesting digression, let's say. So for the last 2 months, like 3 months, or like for this summer, I was focused on analytic philosophy. At the end of May, I started studying consciousness. It was a topic for my speaking club, and I kind of dived into this topic deeply. I recorded the studying stream where I talk over 10 hours about consciousness, analyzing an article on Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. And I concentrated on this idea of consciousness like very strongly. And then I started studying analytic philosophy. I watched a couple of courses of lectures by John Searle, Philosophy of Language, Philosophy of Mind. I read a couple of his books, The Theory of Speech, Acts, and Expression and Meaning. And later I discovered Lakoff, like at the beginning of this month, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, actually. And so it was like, for me, it was as if I were doing a particular job. So I was studying analytic philosophy. It was like one direction which I had for the last 3 months, let's say. And recently, a few days ago, I shifted aside. So I decided to, like, how it happened, I found few audiobooks which I wanted to listen to before, but they weren't recorded. I mean, they were recorded by computer voice, and I didn't like it. But recently, there were audiobooks uploaded on YouTube by Luis Morena. Yeah, he was a speaker. But books, it was Castaneda's books, Fire from Within, The Power of Silence, and The Active Side of Infinity. I wanted to reread these books, and I found that they were uploaded just recently, a few months ago. Before I checked in May, they weren't there. And in May, I reread, or it's more correctly to say re-listened to Journey to Ixtlan, recorded again by this guy, Luis Morena. He's perfect. I enjoy so much listening to his recordings. It's, I guess, the only thing I can compare it to is Dmitry Orgin, who recorded books, some Nietzsche books. He's like, in Russian, his voice, it's so authentic for me. So when I listen to Dmitry Orgin, for example, as Ecce Homo by Nietzsche, it's just 4-hour long book. It's so powerful. I mean, it has a so strong effect on my, on my mind. So when I listen to him, it's so powerful. And the same thing with this guy, Luis Morena. I am the fact that he uploaded 3 more books. He actually uploaded all Castaneda's books now are uploaded on YouTube, recorded by this guy, Luis Morena. It's so wonderful. I'm listening to this guy like for 5 hours, being completely focused on the content. So actually that what happens. This week I listened to the entire book Fire from Within. It took me just 2 days to listen the entire book, like 11 hours. And I started listening The Power of Silence. And while doing this, I checked out some basic concepts like impeccability, assemblage point, whatever, forbearance, discipline, timing, control. Anyway, so petty tyrants, it's a beautiful concept, like petty tyrants, so wonderful. So I checked out these concepts on YouTube, on the internet, and I discovered a forum. And in this forum, there was a guy, John O'Neill, and he published some articles in this forum about Castaneda and about seeing and sorcery. And on this forum, I discovered a link to a Facebook group. I went to the link. I went to the group. It was a closed group. I joined it, and they have talks on Zoom quite rare, maybe once a week. Probably once a week, maybe a little bit less frequently. And so I got exactly in time. It was yesterday. No, it was day before yesterday in the evening when I found the group, and they had a talk yesterday. So, and I subscribed to this talk. And yesterday I was listening to these guys talking about the book Beyond, the book Teaching of Don Juan, the first book written by Castaneda. And basically, it wasn't actually a conversation. It was just this guy talking about the book for a couple of hours. Well, there was few women who actually tried to, communicate with him, and probably there were. But what I'm saying is that if to sum all these 2 hours, this guy were talking for an hour and probably 100 minutes, and other people contributed maybe like very little, like 20 minutes, even probably less. But this guy were talking most of the time, and sometimes he was just, and he couldn't, like, the point was that he was so vague. It was very hard to understand what he was trying to say. And I'm not saying, like, I'm not mentioning the way how he spoke. Well, basically, like, listen how I speak right now. So I'm aware that I speak quite vaguely. what I'm trying to say, I can understand it, but still, well, I'm trying to stay focused on one thing, but sometimes I go aside, but still I see that there are certain vagueness. So I'm not pretending to be, to be the great speaker or whatever. I'm just trying to do that. So this, like for me, it's an exercise. I'm doing it to get better. I know that it's possible to get better if I talk and if I focus my attention, if I'm doing it regularly. But this guy, he was so, self-important. And we had like at the beginning when I entered the conversation, he asked me like, where are you from? And I said, I'm from Russia. And then I talked a little bit about Castaneda and my experience of reading him. And so there was a talk about a dialogue, like inner dialogue. And I tried to share like the really profound experience which I had. Like the profundity of this experience was so huge. With like the realization which I had at the end of 2016 when I shifted to English. And basically one of the reasons was because I used English to stop my inner dialogue in Russian. And the profundity was that the profundity of the experience was that I've realized that it's actually maybe a technique. And for me, it was exactly the technique. So the whole idea with stopping your inner dialogue, it's not to shut it down, but to develop it, to teach you how to think. So this is the one of the best tricks which this ideology, and it's again, it's not Castaneda, it's probably the entire Buddhism. So this whole idea of inner silence, it's not being actually silent. It's like you learn how to think by shutting your thoughts. So you do exactly the opposite. The whole idea is it works. If you try to do that, you can do that. You spend a year, 2 years, 3 years, and at some moment you realize that it's actually not the purpose. It's not the purpose to shut it down. It's impossible, and it's unnecessary. What's really important to make you understand the nature of this, like of your thoughts, make you understand how to control them, and make you understand how to use them. So basically, you learn to think. You learn to use this inner dialogue, not in a compulsive way. When basically everything what's going on, you just talk about everything. You're not in control, but use it in a strategic way. So when you have certain purposes and you use your thinking, you think kind of in a consistent way. For you have a reason why you think, and you just try to concentrate on a particular thing. Again, you learn to think perfectly, use perfect grammar, certain words. You basically learn to use certain words for describe, not certain, but again, there are so many useless things which you may say. Now I see, if I analyze what I'm saying right now, I would probably get rid of 80% of what I'm saying. Since there are lots of repetitions, I'm see something, I'm trying to describe it, but I'm aware that I'm vague. But the point is, of course, this is this exact moment. I know what happens when I practice it for years. The point is that in 5 years, if you listen to me, and probably it's easy to make an experiment now. Just go and find videos which I recorded in 5 years. Well, it may be impossible now since I'm just uploading the video, but if these videos are still there in 5 years, and they'll probably will be there, and I'll continue recording videos, I'll be perfect. My language will be perfect. Like literally, I know it because I've done it. I've done the same with Russian language. I remember myself being very vague and unable to express anything. Then practicing self-talk for 4 years, since 2013 till 2017, when I shifted it to English. And during these 4 years, I basically developed my thinking to the level where I can be so clear, so perfect in my speech, when I don't use anything superfluous, when I may, basically concentrate on one particular idea, and through a dialogue develop this idea to the point where it was impossible before. The same I'm doing in English. But this guy, again, this guy was so vague, and he was so self-proud, and it was. When I came there, I thought, oh, okay, these guys, they're really serious guys. I mean, his writings and his experience, what he was writing about it, I thought, wow, this is like, these guys must be impeccable. And again, I listened to this Luis Morena, Carlos like Fire from Within, and I was so inspired by this book. I thought, well, if these guys actually did serious work and if they achieved something, it will be very interesting to listen. What are they talking about? How are they doing that? I got there. I had a conversation with this guy. He shot and well, maybe I wasn't polite at the since I started. When he asked me about Castaneda, I basically said, no, guys, I don't believe actually that Don Juan was real. And then, like, I had very unique experience. I was writing for 10 years, my journals. And then I realized that Castaneda did almost the same thing, since, then I started publishing them. And I realized that the man who started writing these journals is very different from the man who I am right now. And during these 10 years, I developed myself, and probably the whole idea with Don Juan, it was exactly this experience. So Castaneda started writing his journals. He developed an impeccable style. And then in 10 years, he looked back and saw himself being very stupid writer. And then he started correcting his journals and basically developing this idea of Don Juan as if it was he himself. So essentially, what I tried to say was that Don Juan actually was Castaneda, and Castaneda created Castaneda. The point was, like, the Castaneda's character is unreal, whereas Don Juan, it's a pseudonym for Castaneda. And well, I tried to explain it, and then I tried to talk about this inner dialogue, and this guy muted me. He really muted me. But before he muted me, he cursed. Like, he was very, polite guy, and in his speech he tried to be, very polite. Though he was vague, but he was polite and he was gentle, and he didn't use some, cursing or. But when he talked to me, when we had a conversation, by the way, I tried to make a conversation, so I tried to talk to him, but it was impossible, since he didn't listen anything of what I said. He listened his own mind, and then he tried to shut me up. He said, "Just shut the fuck up." And I said, "Come on, what are you, like? What's going on?" And and finally he just muted me. And then I listened to their talk for 2 hours. I tried to be indifferent, so obviously it affected my personal, like, feelings, whatever. I was thinking, oh, this, like, it's very strange. What happened is very strange. Perhaps I said something that that pissed off this guy, but this, like, I was okay. So in few minutes, I basically got over. I mean, I recovered the balance, the clearness, whatever. And I was listening. I was trying to listen to this guy, getting rid of all my biases of, like, what happened in the beginning of the conversation. And finally, I realized that it's just, he doesn't know what he's talking about at all. He talked about, for, like, basically most of the conversation was dedicated to 4 enemies of the man of knowledge: fear, clarity, power, and old age. And maybe just my perspective, but no, from my point of view, these guys were basically discussing some childish things, something that they didn't understand at all. Nothing like fear, fear, clarity. Like clarity, yeah, especially clarity. Like anyway, so I digressed. So the point was, this is my part of my biography. Instead of studying analytic philosophy, I got back to what happened. I got back to Castaneda, listened to a couple of his books, was very inspired by them. Then had a conversation via Zoom and discovered something really, really interesting. But anyway, yeah, probably I'll try to join another conversation and see how it will go, just to compare, since okay, it doesn't matter. Let's go and talk about the second paragraph eventually. As regards materialistic atomism, it is one of the best refuted theories that have been advanced. And in Europe, there's now perhaps no one in the learned world so unscholarly as to attach serious signification to it, except for convenient everyday use, as an abbreviation of the means of expression, thanks chiefly to the Paul Bosovich. He and the Paul Copernicus have hitherto been the greatest and most successful opponents of ocular evidence. For a while, Copernicus has persuaded us to believe, contrary to all the sentence, that the earth does not stand fast. Bosovich has taught us to adjure the belief in the last thing that stood fast of the earth, the belief in substance, in matter, in the earth residuum and particle atom. It is the greatest triumph over the senses that hitherto been gained on earth. One must, however, go still further and also declare war, relentless war, to the knife against the atomic requirements, which still lead to dangerous afterlife and places where no one suspects them, like the more celebrated metaphysical requirements. One must also, above all, give the finishing stroke to that other and more portentous atomism which Christianity has taught best and longest, the soul atomism. Let it be permitted to designate by this expression the belief which regards the soul as something indestructible, eternal, invisible, as a monad, as an atom. This belief ought to be expelled from science. Between ourselves, it is not at all necessary to get rid of the soul thereby, and thus renounce one of the oldest and most venerated hypotheses, as happens frequently to the clumsiness of naturalists, who can hardly touch on the soul without immediately losing it. But the way is open for new acceptations and refinements of the soul hypothesis, and such conceptions as mortal soul and soul of subjective multiplicity and soul as social structure of the instincts and passions want henceforth to have legitimate rights in science. In that, the new psychologist is about to put an end to the superstitions which have hitherto flourished with almost tropical luxuriance around the idea of the soul. He is really, as it were, thrusting himself into a new desert and a new distrust. It is possible that the older psychologists had a merrier and more comfortable time of it. Eventually, however, he finds that precisely thereby he is also condemned to invent, and who knows, perhaps to discover the new. All right, atomic theory and Christianity and soul. Let me go slowly through this paragraph. By the way, I want to pay attention to all expressions which Nietzsche uses. I found that they often are very apt to my thinking. Often I have certain ideas which I'm trying to project in different frames in order to understand better what's going on. I create some metaphors in my mind, and I see that I still can't use all of these expressions which I've learned while doing this study in stream. I mean, it's when I focus my attention on certain concepts, I may take every concept from Nietzsche's, from all these paragraphs. I may take every expression, every idea, sometimes even the entire paragraph. But when I think on my kind of regular basis, when I just wake up and there's a stream of consciousness, and mostly I'm living in this stream of consciousness. I'm not living in the world of things, in the world of perception. So for me, my life, I live in this stream of consciousness, and for me, it's a linguistic stream of consciousness. It's language. It's not some feelings, or well, some feelings, of course, but language is the ultimate way of expressing these feelings. So it's something that very few people can understand. So they think that language is kind of tool. We use it for communication. It's the say, like to say something, to find the metaphor, to find the word, to express a feeling. Is basically to have the feeling, but it's a subtle way of feeling something. For me, again, like you may see what's going on right now. I'm basically talking to the computer, like to myself, what I'm just feeling. So for me, it's the same way of feeling, but very sophisticated way of feeling. And my natural stream of consciousness, it doesn't use often all these new concepts. I guess it will use later, but now there are some ideas, but I use different words. I often find myself unable to use these phrases, these expressions, which are necessary. So I see, like, let's suppose I wake up and I think about my daily routine. So I'm trying to analyze what I'm doing. I'm trying to find the best order. I'm trying to find the most important thing for me. That now there are approximately 7 projects which I involved in, and I do daily journaling. So every I start every day basically from journaling, from writing about something, and it's not always easy to distinguish the most important thing, which is like for me right now. So I mean, I start writing and I think, okay, what should I write about today? Is it the topic which I'm studying for the next speaking club? Or is it something related to studying stream? Or is it something related to analytic philosophy? Or is it something about the book which I've read yesterday, like in the case of Fire from Within? I wanted to make an analysis of the book. I wanted to write a short review, but I failed to do that because there were other things which I wanted to think about too. And again, the point is, like, I'm trying to analyze all these thoughts and actions, and often I need the vocabulary, and I lack, like, I don't have a certain vocabulary to help me to think about it in depth. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that that's probably the reason why I want to pay attention to individual expressions, since they may be very useful. Okay, as regards, and yeah, probably I memorize the entire thing after I read the paragraph. And the clear analysis is really helpful for further memorization. So As regards materialistic atomism, it is one of the best refuted theories that have been advanced, And in Europe, there is now perhaps no one in the learned world so unscholarly as to attach serious signification to it, except for convenient everyday use, as an abbreviation of the means of expression. Thanks chiefly to the Paul Bosovich, he and the Paul Copernicus have hitherto been the greatest and most successful opponents of ocular evidence. Okay, this is the first sentence. And what's going on here? Some materialistic atomism. So basically, Nietzsche wants to say that no one who is concerned with science considers materialistic atomism seriously. And let's just go through words. Okay, as regards materialistic atomism, okay, it is one of the best refuted theories. Okay, it is one of the best refuted theories. Who refuted it? Paul Boscovich and Paul Copernicus. All right. That have been advanced. This is one of the best refuted theories that have been advanced. I'm not sure that I fully understand, like, that have been advanced. What does it mean? Well, if they had been advanced, I could understand, since he wants to say this is one of the best refuted theories, meaning now they are refuted, but before they had been advanced. But is it about present? Like, okay, they are now advanced, and at the same time, the best refuted. Yeah, I think, I mean, the past, perfect, like, for, as I feel, there probably must be past perfect, but perhaps I am wrong. But anyway, as regards materialistic atomism, it is one of the best refuted theories that have been advanced. Oh, maybe they are advanced right now. Sure, it's not in the past. So, but again, he say it's one of the best refuted. It's no longer advanced, right? It's refuted. But yeah, again, maybe it's advanced at the same time. In the Europe, there is now perhaps no one in the learned world so unscholarly as to attach serious signification to it. Okay, it's refuted. And again, no one cares about materialistic atomism. Again, not no one. Again, I'm trying to, like, I use very stupid words. I mean, I'm trying to rephrase it, but the words which I use are they're misleading. So I form a kind of simple version of what Nietzsche tries to say, and I think, oh, this is how I understand it. But I see that my understanding is stupid. It doesn't actually allow me to see better what Nietzsche wants to say. It creates a fog. Destroys not destroys, but it doesn't matter. Okay, it basically, let's use Nietzschean words instead of my words. But yeah, let's just be more careful. I probably need to look for better words. So instead of saying, okay, it's stupid, let's not do that, let's just use Nietzschean words, let's find better words. So in Europe, there's now perhaps no one in the learned world. Okay, no one in the learned world. And that's what I'm saying about my stream of consciousness. So it's the content of this stream it's unbelievable, but the way how I express it with this language is exactly like I'm doing it right now. So I have in mind some brilliant picture, but when I talk about it, it sounds as if I'm describing some shit. And this is exactly because I use words which aren't suitable. And these words are actually suitable with the words which Nietzsche uses. And I want to use the same bloody words, but I do not understand them, since my perception, in my stream of consciousness, I understand these words, but I kind of have no, like, it feels as if I can't use them since they are not mine words. It's somebody else's words, and I don't want to just repeat somebody else's words. But it's a mistake. So let's pay attention. Okay, in Europe, there is now perhaps no one in the learned world so unscholarly. So unscholarly means so stupid. Can I say so stupid? Or no, the best way to say it's like so uneducated, right? Unscholarly, as to attach serious signification to it. Yeah, there's no, it in this case is materialistic atomism. Materialistic atomism. Except for convenient everyday use, as an abbreviation of the means of expression. Thanks chiefly to the Paul Boscovich, he and the Paul Copernicus have hitherto been the greatest and most successful opponents of ocular evidence. All right, so no one, perhaps no one in the learned world, attaches serious signification to materialistic atomism, except for convenient everyday use. Thanks chiefly to Boscovich and Copernicus, the greatest and most successful opponents of ocular evidence. So basically, they proved that, the Earth is in the center of the universe. Moreover, it moves, it doesn't stay. In the 19th century, now in 21st century, it looks as if, it's so obvious. We all know that, we all understand what's going on, and how could people be so stupid not to understand that sun is the, center of our solar system, not the Earth. But in the 19th century, it still wasn't as clear as it is right now, since after, there was 100 years of basically public education. Schools, as we know them now, have been around only for 100 years or even less. I mean, yeah, there were in the end of 19th century, there were public schools, but the access to these schools was very limited, and there were very few people studying, and there were very few teachers. And not talking about the beginning of 19th century, it was available only for aristocrats and priests, like children of aristocrats and priests. But now we have like 100 years of education. Moreover, we have newspapers and all this media, the internet, television, radio, and no one actually cares about this Earth and sun. But if you ask average people in the time when Nietzsche wrote this book, it was 1885. I guess 50%. I don't know exactly how much, but in Russia, there were still, in the beginning of 19th century, it was still very strange. Like people still believe, like there were people who still believed that no, let's say what we now call flat Earth. So there were lots of people who believed in flat Earth, and they didn't believe in science. They believed science. Hey, the whole 19th century in Russia, it's science is it's like a devilish enterprise. Most peasants were brainwashed by their masters and by the culture that science actually is something terrible. And yeah, but maybe even right now, I mean, now people may believe, like, there may be some children, of course, like when before they go to school, I guess if you talk to them and ask what's going on, what's the universe, I mean, if nobody actually teaches a child, it's very natural to believe that sun goes around the earth. But yeah, the point is that in 19th century it wasn't as clear as, and again, what moreover, when we want to talk about it now, I guess recently I tried to think about it on my own. How would I prove that earth revolves around the sun? And I've realized that even though I watched lots of lectures about natural sciences, and I'm basically studying all sorts of things for the last decade, I've realized that it'll take a lot of time. It's not just, I say this is some, equation or whatever, which describes the actual movements of the planets and stars. No, it's, I've realized that if I place myself in the position of a child and I have to prove other children that Earth revolves around the sun, I probably won't be able to do that. And that was so pitiful. You may ask yourself, like, if you want to run this experiment, try to explain to yourself how do you really know. It's not about, of course, you watched a picture on the internet, or from made from space, where there's Earth and it's round and it revolves around the sun, and sun is much bigger than it seems to be. But people didn't know it in 17th century. So if you ask yourself, okay, let's suppose I do not have all these tools. I do not have an internet. I do not have an access to space. Like, how would I understand that this is true? And the point is that people, like, imagine, people believed in this for more than 1,000 years throughout the entire earth. Like, were they stupid? They were brilliant philosophers in ancient Greece and Rome, and they knew what they were doing, and they were writing books and educating generations, but all they believed was false. So the relationship between Earth and the sun, it was such a, when we talk about revolutions, right? For example, there were recently a couple of revolutions in some countries, like in Russia, in France, and in America. So this revolution, in comparison with revolution, which we had an understanding of the relationship of the earth and the sun, it's nothing. Like this scientific revolution, when we realized that, oh, this is actually what's going on. Like all these inventions, the internet, electricity, whatever, everything what we have right now, it's due to this scientific revolution, which happened exactly like the most significant shift in science happened when we realized that the sun is not like revolving around the earth, and the earth is round, and the earth is moving. And there are certain forces like gravity, which force the Earth to move. And yeah, and the universe is infinite. Like now it's very clear. So if you graduate from a school, you know that, or if you just watch some videos about it, so you know that space is, or maybe it's not infinite, but you may believe that it's like 13 billion years, like light years wide. I mean, it started like there was a big bang, let's say the current theory, there was a big bang, and the universe started expanding itself, and now it's like 13 billion years, light years. So it's huge. What's outside nobody knows, but what we can see, the light, like the light expanded to this 13 billion years, light years. And yeah, this is, it opens broad horizons for our imagination. Why it's important? Because before you may think like your imagination will stop stop in the sky. So okay, there's heaven, uh, there's God, and that's the end of the story. Don't think too much what's going on. But now there are black holes, dark energy, multiple galaxies, the entire universe, and the scale. Like we are so tiny. I mean, you may think about atoms, right? Nobody saw atoms, like actual atoms, but we have a concept. That if you take, let's say, whatever your hand and divided it billion times, and then divided it another billion times, and then divided it a few more billion times, you'll get an atom. Well, I'm not saying the actual size. Actually, what's the size of the atom? Yeah, the point, like atom is a concept. It's not a real thing. I don't see. No, okay. Under most definitions, the radio of isolated neutral atoms range between 30 and 300 pm. Trillions of a meter. Okay. The radius. The radii of isolated neutral atoms range between 30 and 300 picometer. Yeah, picometer. Okay. 1/1 trillionth of a meter. Okay. So 1 trillionth. No, it's like billion multiplied by what? By 1,000? 1,000. It's 1,000 billions, right? A trillion. Yeah, basically 1 and 12 zeros. 6 zeros. Yeah, 12 zeros. But this is not an atom. That's the point. So when you think, like, it's a conventional way of pointing out at something that science may deal with. So we discovered this little, it's not particles. Nietzsche will, like, this is the entire paragraph. It's a prediction of quantum physics. So at this time, there was no quantum physics, but Nietzsche already talks about quantum physics and says that it's all just nonsense. Like we can't say that there are some particles, since on the deepest level, there's nothing. There's just whatever we call it, energy, when we call it any other name. But what's the point? The point is that there's, like, we can say that the world consists of matter, since beyond our experience, there's things which are not matter itself. So you can't feel it. It doesn't have properties of our bodies. So our body has weight and mass, but atoms, they're different. And then again, we always divide them to the infinity. The point is like atom, and it's a Greek word. It means not divided. It's like individual, the same word. So basically the word individual and atom, it's the meaning of words is the same. So individual, not divided. Atom, not divided. That's so fascinating when you like think about atoms and individuals, and when you try to understand physics and the psychology through analyzing the linguistic roots of words. It gets so clear like what's really going on. And most importantly, you can see how other people use the same words, and do they really understand them or not. So the point again with atoms, the point is that atom is not the particle. Like in modern science, in the science of 20th century, 21st century, we use the word atom to refer to a particular thing, which is like a proton, electrons. Proton has a positive charge, electrons have negative charge, and they basically are like constituent elements of the reality, kind of building blocks of the reality. But the concept of atom is not about these. It's not about this particle. It's about something that now we call it, like, I guess, quarks. Like when we go deeper and discover leptons and some other particles, which actually again, which so I want to study a little bit more about it. Now I see that I don't have a sufficient vocabulary. Well, I have it in my like native language, but in English I have to use word, like I have to talk about something that I can't really describe. And yeah, but the point is again, atom. There's something that can't be divided further, and in the universe, it seems that there's no such thing, and especially now in our imagination. But coming back to this idea that what the discovery of the fact that there is a huge universe, that Earth revolves around the sun, and there are many suns, and there, like, some of them are almost infinitely bigger than our sun, not infinite, but like much bigger suns. And there's some black matter, and the universe, like the scale. So our Carl Sagan called it, pale blue dot. The point is that everything what happened in the universe, everything what happened with human civilization, it just happened on this tiny peck of, from a cosmic perspective, it's nothing. There are like infinity outside, and when you like, it allows your imagination to kind of to develop your imagination. You first have to grasp that there's like infinite capacities for your imagination. It's much bigger than what you can see, or what you can touch, or what you can smell. And sensualism is kind of limiting, but this perspective that imagination is infinite, and you may basically imagine stuff which aren't there, it's so powerful. And this okay, I think I'm talking too much about it. Let's go on. So once again, let me read this first sentence. By the way, I have to train my pronunciation. Damn it, I see that so hard. Like when I start focusing on the content, I lose my focus, my concentration, and my Russian accent is so strong. But if I try to focus on my pronunciation, it sounds much better. It always puzzled me. How is it possible? Why it's so important here? Why when I focus on pronunciation, I may speak almost perfectly, but when I focus on the content, I don't care about the way how I say words, and I know that it's important to say them as clearly as possible, but once again, the content gets more important than the form. Anyway, as regards materialistic atomism, it is one of the best refuted theories that have been advanced. And in Europe, there is now perhaps no one in the learned world so unscholarly as to attach serious signification to it, except for convenient everyday use, as an abbreviation of the means of expression. Thanks chiefly to the Paul Boscovich, he and the Paul Copernicus have hitherto been the greatest and most successful opponents of ocular evidence. Okay, now let's go on and read the next sentence. Okay. For while Copernicus has persuaded us to believe, contrary to all the senses, that the earth does not stand fast, Boscovich has taught us to adjure the belief in the last thing that stood fast of the earth, the belief in substance, in matter, in the earth residuum, the particle atom. It is the greatest triumph over the senses that has hitherto been gained on earth. To be honest, I have no idea who is this guy. I never tried to find out. Now let's do that. A physicist, astronomer, mathematician, philosopher, diplomat, poet, theologian, Jesuit priest, a polymath from the Republic of Ragusa, was an aristocratic maritime republic centered on the city of Dubrovnik in Dalmatia that carried that name from 1355 until 1808. It reached its commercial peak in 15th and 16th centuries before being conquered by Napoleon's French Empire. Let's read it a little bit more. Okay, let's just get there. Napoleon's French Empire and formally annexed to the Napoleonic Kingdom of Italy in 1808. It had a population of about 30,000 people, of whom 5,000 lived within the city walls. Its motto was "Non bene pro toto libertas venditur aura," which means liberty is not sold for all the gold in the world. Oh, that's fascinating. Liberty is not sold for all the gold in the world. Yeah, if we use the word leisure, like on a personal level, what is liberty? It's basically leisure. What is freedom? It's leisure. And they say, we're not going to sell our leisure for money. We're not going to work, basically. That's their motto. But Napoleon came and said, no, you are going to work. Okay, Boscovich, Republic of Ragasa. Never heard of this. Like, let's find the Russian translation. Dubrovnikskaya Respublika. Never heard of this, really. Never. That's so interesting. Ragasa. Okay. There's some families, like famous families in Russian language, like Dubrovnikskaya. In Russian, it sounds like Dubrovsky. And there's some famous families, Dubrovsky. But anyway, so Boscovich, polymath, wow, theologian, poet, diplomat, philosopher, mathematician, astronomer, physicist, produced a precursor of atomic theory and made many contributions to astronomy, including the first geometric procedure for determining the equator of a rotating planet from 3 observations of a surface feature, and for computing the orbit of a planet from 3 observations of its position. In 1753, he also discovered the absence of atmosphere on the moon. Okay, middle years, late years, further works, legacy, religious views, nationality, works. Yeah, Society of Jesus. Okay, let's get back. Probably Nietzsche named him because he didn't want to name some popular uh, physicists of his time. I guess there are many people who worked on these theories, atomic theories. And Boscovich, it's 1711, 1787. Well, anyway, just a brief uh, brief introduction to this guy. I'm not definitely going to read anything by Boscovich since now it's not my point. It's usually what happens when you study philosophy or anything. Just discover some name, discover some fact, and you want to know more about this fact or this name, and then you end up reading 5 books. And in these 5 books, of course, you discover more facts, and you end up reading another 5 books, and it never ends. That's like my journey, basically. What I'm doing, like as soon as I developed this interest in literature and philosophy after 2007, that's basically what's going on. I read one book, there are countless facts which I want to understand, which I want to know better. If these facts are true or false, and what are they really talking about? And then 5 books more, and after reading 5 books, I want to read 50 more books, and then I read these 50 books. That's what's going on. And then after reading these 50 books, I want to read 500 books. And then I'm trying to read 500 books. And, there are 5,000 books, and it's never ending. And the point is, of course, there are several ways. The first, you may control your passions and learn to just not be overwhelmed with all this information, gradually store it in some particular ways. Or you may basically give up. You may say, that's exactly what's going on when you try to shut down your so-called inner dialogue. You say, okay, information is endless. It's impossible to know everything. It's impossible to chase whatever smartness, intelligence. Let's just shut down our inner dialogues and perceive what's going on instead of describing it. And yeah, it may be also a convenient way, but for me, it looks now, and especially like Nietzsche is extremely powerful in arguing against this shutting down of your inner dialogues. So basically, shutting down your inner dialogue is nihilism. So according to Nietzsche, you basically you've done. So if you shut down your inner dialogue, you say, okay, it's impossible to know everything. I'll never be able to achieve whatever I'm trying to achieve. Let's just stop achieving anything, and let's stop studying more. Like, facts are endless. What's the point? But still, you have to do something. And the point is, you may meditate for the rest of your life. So you may sit down on the floor for 5 hours every day and just contemplate whatever your feelings or uh, absolute or whatever the hell you want to contemplate. Or you may just go on and, okay, that's fine. There are endless amount of facts. Let's just structure them in a particular way. Let's discover our own personal way of structuring these facts. How can we do that? Well, let's see. Let's do something. Okay, is it important? Like Boscovich, is it important right now for me? Probably not. Probably instead of studying Boscovich, I'll continue studying analytic philosophy and read John Searle. But at some moment, just the knowledge that there were such guys, Boscovich and Copernicus is important. That's for sure. I'll probably, I tried to read Copernicus and Giordano Bruno back in the days when I studied Russian language, and I read Giordano Bruno's about what he was about the different worlds. Yeah, about the Earth and different worlds. I don't remember the exact title, but I remember it was mind-opening book. I was, wow, now I see what was going on. Yeah, but in my personal hierarchy of philosophers and thinkers, I wouldn't spend so much time like, reading Giordano's Bruno's works, just to get familiar with his way of thinking, but not to analyze. Like Kant, for example, I dedicated enormous amount of time to studying Kant, and basically I read just 7 volumes of his collected works, and I reread some of his books, like The Critique of Pure Reason. I read 2 times, one slowly, one fast. The Critique of Practical Reason, or and Our Capacity for Judgments. I reread it a couple of times. But essentially, the point is that some thinkers deserve attention, some don't. The best way to understand is like a personal way of structuring the information. Anyway, so it's like scared. I guess what I described, this contrast between nihilists and the second category, it's skeptics. So they say, okay, we see that nobody knows everything, but we still don't give up on our search. We continue looking forward. We continue investigating instead of, okay, it's impossible. And this is, again, it's agnosticism, nihilism, or all sorts of, religious, which consider thinking as a disease, as something that we have to get rid of. There are many, like, again, yesterday I participate exactly. It's just a religion, just the cult. They say thinking doesn't matter. What's important to shut down your inner dialogue. And the problem is, of course, that most of these people, they don't realize that it's just one way of looking at the world. And the best way, like if you do it for a long period of time, as I did, I mean, I had been doing it for almost a decade, trying to shut down my inner dialogue, trying to stalk in my self-importance, trying to, do virtuous, work, trying to discover my inner nature. And it took me like a decade to get to the point when I realized, okay, let's just reverse it. Let's just reverse it and look at it from another angle. Let's just try to, change the view and see if it works. If we, for example, say that inner dialogue is not like, you have to do exactly the opposite. So instead of shutting it down, you have to develop it in your own way. Yeah, and then you may see, then you actually see what's going on, instead of being single-minded and not able to change your perspective. Anyway, Copernicus, what was the sentence? Let me get back. Okay. For a while, Copernicus has persuaded us to believe. So, to believe, and again, he uses believe here, contrary to all the senses, that Earth does not stand fast. Boscovich has taught us to adjure the belief in the last thing that stood fast of the Earth, the belief in substance. These categories like substance, it's Aristotelian categories. Matter is also an Aristotelian category. In the Earth, residuum and particle atom. It is the greatest triumph over the senses that has hitherto been gained on Earth. So the idea, again, matter. It's easy to, and that's what the common sense didn't go for. So we all now know that the sun is in the middle of our solar system and Earth revolves around the sun. But we don't go further. We don't say, okay, matter, this is real. I mean, this is real. I'm real. This room is real. The computer is real. This cup, it's real. It consists of particles, of atoms, of certain, things which I can perceive. But Nietzsche says, like, Boscovich has taught us. And here, I guess Nietzsche, often in Nietzsche we see this emphasis, like, this soul atomism, for example, or invent or discover. So he emphasizes certain words. And I would recommend him to emphasize the word us, especially in places like this too. Why? Because he says Boscovich has taught us. Like this us, he doesn't mean everybody. He doesn't mean like people in general. He says us means like there's a certain category of people, us. We understand something. We had been taught by somebody to understand something. And it's not like everybody, since there are very few people who, like after like Nietzsche wrote it in 1885 or earlier, 1884. An introduction was written in 1885. But the point is, now, for example, if you look at the majority of people, they still believe that there's this world of atoms exist, that senses tell us about the world, that physics is about studying, hard facts, about studying, matter, about it's so strange. And yeah, the idea that this greatest triumph over the senses that has hitherto been gained on Earth, well, it has been gained by, let's say, 0.1% of Earth population. And probably even less if we talk about the practical implication of this gain, since even those people who understand science, who understand that there's no particles, that there's no solid matter, there's no substance, they still behave as if though they believed in substance, as if though substance was true and the word made sense. It's a nice word, matter, substance, but it's again a nice word as an abbreviation of the means of expression. All right. So let me read it once more and check out some phrases here. For while Copernicus has persuaded us to believe, contrary to all the senses, that the earth does not stand fast, Boscovich has taught us to adjure the belief in the last thing that stood fast on earth, the belief in substance. Okay, to adjure the belief, I mean to get rid of the belief. In matter, yeah, adjure, is it getting rid of something? Or there's another way of using this word. Adjure, abjure, not adjure, abjure. To state publicly that you will give up a particular belief or way of behaving. Okay, renounce.
Abjure.
Abjure. Okay. Has taught us to abjure the belief in the last thing that stood fast on earth, the belief in substance, in matter, in the earth residuum, the particle atom. Okay, residuum, what is residuum? This looks like a Latin word. Okay, there's no such word. Residue, I guess the same meaning. Substance that remains on the surface, the container. Don't think it's a nice word. Okay, let's try to find residuum. Meaning, a chemical residue, a class of society that is unemployed and without privileges or opportunities. Well, I guess it's a chemical residue. But again, what is a residue? A substance that remains on the surface, in a container, etc., and cannot be removed easily, or that remains after a chemical process. Oh, okay, I understand now. Yeah, the person that is left after the rest has gone or been taken away. Yeah, now I got it. So in the earth residuum, something. Yeah, some substance. Yeah, remained after everything else has gone. The particle atom. It is the greatest triumph over the senses that has hitherto been gained on earth. All right, so materialistic atomism, it is one of the best refuted theories that have been advanced. And in Europe, there's now perhaps no one in the learned world so unscholarly as to attach serious signification to it, except for convenient everyday use, as an abbreviation of the means of expression. Thanks chiefly to the Paul Boscovich, he and the Paul Copernicus have hitherto been the greatest and most successful opponents of ocular evidence. For a while, Copernicus has persuaded us to believe, contrary to all the senses, that the earth does not stand fast. Boscovich has taught us to adjure the belief in the last thing that stood fast on earth, the belief in substance, in matter, in the earth residuum, the particle atom. It is the greatest triumph over the senses that has hitherto been gained on earth. All right, one must, however, go still further and also declare war, a relentless war of the knife, against the atomistic requirements, which still lead a dangerous afterlife in places where no one suspects them, like the more celebrated metaphysical requirements. One must also, above all, give the finishing stroke to that other and more portentous atomism, which Christianity has taught best and longest, the soul atomism. Okay, portentous, what is this word? Portentous. Portentous, showing that something important is going to happen, especially something bad. Trying to appear important and serious. Yeah, portentous. I guess I may assign this adjective to the man whom I listened to yesterday for 2 hours. Like, he was very portentous. Portentous. Okay, so what are we talking about? One must, however, go still further and also declare war against the atomic requirements, which still lead to dangerous afterlife in places where no one suspects them, like the more celebrated metaphysical requirements. And metaphysical requirements, it's Kantian synthetic judgments, a priori. So basically, some concepts which exist before any possible experience. So if you zoom in further and further, you'll find something that Kant called a priori judgments, which are the basis of our knowledge, which do not need any experience to be proved, like some axioms or whatever. And so Nietzsche says it's like we have to get rid of them as well, right? One must also above all give, and not just them, but also soul atomism. Yeah, he emphasizes soul atomism, this belief in the self, in a particle or any, like, what is the hell is this soul, right? Mostly it's perceived by people as a tiny particle which is in their bodies or exists in their bodies, or it's perceived by them as something which is not in the body, which somewhere else, which beyond their reach. So we may think about it as, let's suppose I'm a character in a video game, and there's a man who plays me, or a thing that plays me, and this thing is actually beyond my reach, since I do everything according to its commands, and I have actually no way to understand that I'm in a video game, right? Well, now perhaps it was the command of this player to make me understand what's going on. And I say, wow, it's like in the movie 13th Floor. So there's infinite ladder of existences, So on each ladder, you think, okay, now let's say, I am a player. So I sit and play a video game, and there's the characters and I control them. But then there's another player who controls me, and there's another player who controls this player. And it's infinite. It's damn infinite. The point is, we stop there. We think, okay, let's suppose there's God. And God is omnipotent, omnipresent, whatever, omniscient. And there's nobody above God. God is the ultimate point. But that's not what's going on in the universe according to science and according to Nietzsche, let's say, or according to anybody who thinks deeply about the nature of metaphysics and language. The point is, it's infinite in both ways. So it's infinite. There's God above God, God above God, God above God, and yeah, it's like turtles down there, down the down the bottom, right? So the point is that when we try to think about soul, it's like the smallest part of God, let's say, and we try to think about the God, it's like the biggest part, and soul and God, they're inextricably connected. They inseparable, and they're basically the same thing. But the point with immortality, that soul is immortal and it goes through all sorts of experiences, this part looks quite implausible from this perspective. We must say God goes through all experiences, meaning by God the universe itself, so that the universe basically transforms itself in various ways, and through this transformation it becomes everything. Like now it's me. Now, like, the universe manifests itself through this body and basically says something about itself. Then next time it's you. So you are the entire universe, and you manifest itself, and you perceive itself through your own eyes, through your own senses, and your reason, your language, whatever. Next time it's a worm. Next time it's a bird. Next time it's an alien, whatever, Illuminati. But the point is, like, it's never a particular, like, you may think, oh, this is me and this is the others. But from this point of view, there's no difference between you and others. Like, everything is fucking the same. And that's, you may, of course, be pessimistic about it, or you may be optimistic. You may say, what? I'm going to go through all these experiences. So I'm going to be basically all these people. I'm going to be everybody. If you think about I, in this case, or soul, so let's use the word soul. So if you think about soul, in this case, this means that there's only one soul in the universe. If you go, my soul, your soul, their soul. No, there's one damn soul. And it goes through all experiences. So at some moment it's you, at some moment it's me, at some moment it's a cat, at some moment it's even a flower, at some moment it's a computer, at some moment it's something else. But it's not different souls, since how the hell it's possible that we have different souls? And we say, oh, okay, they're just interact with each other. No, what's the difference? If you don't remember anything what was before, and you only have an access to your personal experience, you may say, oh, this is my soul, but then my soul will go and become something else. No, it's more convenient to say that, first of all, there's no such relationships as mine. It's only our language which creates this type of connection. When we say, okay, this is mine and this is yours. But in the real world, there's no such thing. It's just a metaphor to express in certain belief that I have the computer, let's say. Why can't I say computer has me? Because I may control the computer. But is it actually the case? Do I control the computer, or can I do whatever I want with this computer? It's very, very, very unlikely that this is like that reality works in this way. What's rather going on, there's no such things as having anything. So whatever I have, it actually has me as well. And the same with soul. So we say soul is a part which, like my deepest nature, the soul, undivided thing, an atom, right? Metaphysical atom, whatever it may be. Maybe just one word, I, which I assign certain qualities, or it may be a feeling, or it may be whatever, a grammatical structure, it may be DNA, whatever the hell it is. The point is, it's never the same in two different moments of time. It's always changing, and it's useful to apply this word to express certain idea. When I say like I, of course, when we have a conversation, if I just get rid of this word like I, instead of saying I would say the man or something. It will sound strange. Like for us, it's better to understand what to do. Like the belief in the synthetic judgments, the belief in I is necessary, but not the true. Like we understand that it's not true. It just the same with the entire language. The whole language is about creating an extra reality, interconnecting this reality with itself, with the world, trying to match the world, like creating a model of the world with words. But the point is just a model. And when we think about this model as independently existing from the world, well, it may be the case, maybe not. But again, the point with soul atomism, yeah, it's it's one of the topics which I really enjoy to think about, and I probably dedicated, I don't know how much time, years thinking about, the nature of personality, the nature of human beings. Once again, it's useful concepts, but it's not necessarily to believe that they are true. We can use them, we can use language, doesn't mean that language has anything to do with truth. Truth, it's from a different realm. Language, something useful, but it always, the problem is there's so much delusion, self-deception with the language. So you believe that certain words, they actually describe the state of affairs in the universe and in society, in probably your mind. But often they're misleading. They don't actually describe anything. They just express certain emotion, certain idea. Again, the serious work here must be done. I mean, for any individual who wants to see what's going on in the linguistics, like studying languages and basically studying your own language which you use, and learn how to write, learn how to read. This is something of the great importance to understand what's going on in the universe. Anyway, talking too much superfluous things which are necessary. One must, however, go still further and declare war, relentless war to the knife against the atomic requirements, which still lead to dangerous afterlife in places where no one suspects them, like the more celebrated metaphysical requirements. One must also, above all, give the finishing stroke to that other and more pretentious atomism which Christianity has taught best and longest, the soul atomism. Finishing stroke to the soul atomism. Well, basically, it's a realization that in our language, it's a suitable concept, but there is nothing in the entire universe which may be considered as just a word. Well, there is something, right? What is it? It's a word. The word is useful to describe a consistency of, Kant called it the transcendental unity of our perception. So it's useful to describe a certain, and again, it's not we think about it as a thing. It's not a thing, it's a process. So soul, in this case, is a process of like an experience of a particular person throughout time, like 70 years. Again, years, we use years. So funny. Anyway, it's not a thing, it's a process, and the mistake is to think about it as a thing. It's from different domain. It's a process. It's a verb. Soul is not a noun, it's a verb. Another mistake is to believe that you have a soul, like your body has a soul. Or probably soul has your body, and if you reverse it, you may say one soul may have different bodies. And in this case, it makes perfect sense. You may say that there's one soul, we may call it kind of human soul, and this is one and the same fucking soul. So all humans, it's basically the same, one and the same thing. To what separates us is our belief that we're different, that we're different individuals, we experience different emotions, we experience different pain, we use different language. But the point, like soul from this perspective is basically language. And we use the same language. As soon as we understand each other, we use the same language. And since we use the same language, this language is actually our deepest nature. And since this language is our deepest language, our deepest nature, everybody who uses language basically is a creation of this language. So one language creates, not one, but the language creates endless amount of bodies, which go there and which they believe all that, they're bodies, they're not language. Language is just a tool. But again, from this perspective, you might say, no, like, language is the mind. There's only one mind, even though it looks as if we have different minds in different languages. But in reality, there's all these differences, they're temporary. And they're illusory. They're not real. Pain is like, again, Schopenhauer, for example, used the word will. So he said, okay, let's get rid of these ideas of soul and all, these metaphysical concepts. Let's replace it with will. And in 20th century, what happened? They basically replaced this idea of soul with the idea of intentionality. Now I'm studying analytic philosophy. There's huge literature around this concept of intentionality, and they think that they made a great job discovering this thing, intentionality, and assigning it to assigning to it the properties which before were assigned to the soul. So like intentionality, consciousness, it's like basically all in the same thing. And but it's just changing of names. It doesn't actually gives us anything. It doesn't give us a certain thing which we may say that this is something that exists independently of our perception, independently of our understanding. This is the thing which exists throughout the entire, space and time. And it's a soul, and it goes through. Yeah, what exactly is this? I don't know. But let me move forward. Let it be permitted to designate by this expression the belief which regards the soul as something indestructible, eternal, indivisible, as a monad, as an atomon. This belief ought to be expelled from science. Well, the only way to, again, it's not the only way, but I'm sharing again my subjective experience. I'm not claiming anything. I'm not inventing any religion or concept or science or whatever. Just I want to understand, really. My purpose is to understand what's going on, not be biased. I mean, whatever I say, if you suggest a better way of looking at things, I'm ready to listen to everybody and have a conversation and see what's going on. But we may think about it as, let's suppose there's something indestructible, something, as Nietzsche uses, like eternal, indivisible, a monad, an atomon. Can we think about it as the entire universe itself? That's an interesting question. Someone asks, is the universe such a thing? The whole universe. Again, it's impossible to conceive the universe since it's if it's infinite, how can we conceive it? When we say, but again, when we use a word, so basically we use the word all or everything, including nothing. Everything including nothing. That's Hegelian dialectic, by the way. Everything including nothing. We may invent a new word for that purposes. Let it be a word. Yeah, I have an amazing word for that. And this is actually my experience combining Russian and English, let's say, not just words, since here I'm not trying to use the Russian words, I'm trying to use, like there's a Russian word, настоящее. If we translate it literally, it consists of two parts. So the first part is a particle na, and the second part is the word. It's germed from the verb стоять, стоящее. So настоящее, basically, if we translate it literally, will be unstanding. Unstanding. In English, there is no such word like unstanding. We have understanding, which is grasping, getting something. We have outstanding, right? Something great and something amazing. And we don't have unstanding. But this word unstanding in Russian, it's everyday word. So people use it. It's it's the same word as reality. So in Russia, we say настоящее, like unstanding, meaning real. So it's a word for real. So in English, we use real. And maybe also an adverb. So we say really, but we say по-настоящему. And yeah, it's a famous word. And it describes basically everything. So the point is like, well, of course, we say like unstanding, if we assign the meaning, we say, okay, standing means to stand, right? And on means like, maybe it means to stand on something, or, basically the idea is substance, for example, it's the same, like stand, it's the same root, like substance, stands, like something that stands. And there, well, I'm not going to dive into etymological roots, but the point again, unstanding, this is a new word which I invent right now for the purposes of explaining everything. So that's like everything including nothing, thereby is called unstanding. So instead of using the word the world or the universe or the reality, I use the word unstanding. So an unstanding means everything. Now let's ask a question. Is it possible that unstanding is eternal, indestructible, that it's all the same? And I guess we have to include the notion of time here too. So it's not unstanding, which is like unstanding at one moment. So it's unstanding throughout time. So it's everything plus nothing plus all time. So like the infinity of time, it's also it's included in the concept of unstanding. So it's like it's everything which can be conceived, and it's not and all possible changes. So let's say there's a reality, right? Let's say the world now. Let's use some probabilistic theories. So the world now may go in multiple directions, right? So if I raise the left arm, it will go in one direction, right? If I raise the right arm, it will go in another directions. So let's suppose that unstanding includes all possible probabilities, like all multiverses, all possible worlds. It also includes in its, concept. It's like a God, basically. But the question is this thing indestructible, eternal, undividable, like, or there may be something outside of this. And the question again, we are talking about infinity. Basically, what we are trying to do, we're trying to grasp fucking infinity here and try to create a concept which will describe infinity itself and say, yeah, this is infinite and in all possible things. It may be conceived as a concept. That's the point. So we may say, okay, as a concept, we see that this is like the thing. So what we use this word understanding, like we use this word to describe everything what has existed, exists, and will exist in the future, including everything that has not existed, doesn't exist, and will not exist in the future. So this is understanding. The question is it possible? Like, is it real? In language, it's real, since I make a definition. Like, it's like a perfect circle, right? So it's a circle. Like, do we have circles in the real world? Like perfect circles? No, it's always like if you zoom in, there's always some. It's impossible to find the perfect circle in nature. It's impossible to find any perfect shape in nature. But we have a concept, and we use this concept and we create the whole fucking science, like math, on these concepts. The same with numbers. So the same, like maybe consider it in metaphysics. So now let's suppose I created what I'm doing right now. I created some kind of synthetic judgment. I say, okay, this is a concept. I have no experience. I do not need any experience to prove that it's true. What I'm really doing, I'm creating a concept and saying that this means that. And there are endless amount of concepts like that. Like the soul, the same concept, but on a different level, like understanding. Again, it includes soul by definition, right? Since it includes everything. But the whole point of soul, right, is if we zoom out, we get understanding. If we zoom in, like what is the building block of understanding? Like it exists, okay, let's agree on that. But what it is made of? It's made of souls, I say. Or, we may create a new term, like understanding. Let's create a new term and say, it's built of what? Of atoms, of special atoms. Yeah, I may invent a new word, of course. Yeah, I think languages were invented, like especially new languages were invented exactly in this way. So you have a language like English. Now I came up with an amazing idea, like understanding. And I basically I may use English and or other languages like Latin or French or whatever, Greek, Russian, and I may create endless amount of concepts and describe the entire world through these concepts. And my description may be very great, like it may be much better than the current description, like scientific description or whatever. And by doing that, I create a new language. Then people join, like they, oh, that's wonderful, that makes sense. Let's use your language and let's use this language to talk about the universe, to talk about our experience, since our old language is not sufficient. We have lots of concepts like souls and God and whatever atoms, which aren't sufficient for describing the world, which are misleading. So if we use these concepts, we basically mislead. We don't see clearly what's going on. We don't see who we are, what we are doing, since our language basically makes us, whatever, stupid. Let's create a new language, a smart language. And then there's, if there's just me, of course, it will not go so far. But let's suppose that some people, are tired of using English and other languages, and they want to do the same. We may do it as a kind of collective project, and then there's the entire, new nation or new religion or new movement, and that's the history of human beings. It's I'm not talking, of course, I'm not talking here about inventing new language. I'm not going to do anything like that. It's not my purpose. I'm busy with other things. And the point is, I describe in the history of philosophy, the history of linguistics, the history of cultures. So many cultures were based on certain, as far as I can tell, it's exactly the same process. So you have a language, you have ideas, you create something new, you create a new word, and then you basically borrow from one language, you borrow from another language, and then you create another. It's like nations. You may think about it as creating a baby, creating a new life. What's going on? There's a mother, there's a father, they join together and then create a new life. What's going on with culture? So we have one language, we have another, we join the concepts, we create like the new language, let's say, and this language creates a new culture. Like when people, and it starts when we have different languages, right? So there are different tribes on earth, and they created their own language, and then they discovered each other. They started doing translations, and they realized, wow, they like people talk about the same things using the same words in different words, and then let's try to join these languages. And I think like in Russian, for example, all our modern languages like Latin, one of the modern languages as well, but like English, Russian, French, German. I don't know about probably Chinese, Japanese, Korean as well. So all these languages are not unique languages. They consist of different languages. So if we take English, there are lots of French, there's lots of German, there's Russian, there's some Russian words as well, Russian, Latin, Greek, whatever. Other, like it consists of many different languages. How it was developed through the same process. So we have people who know two languages. They start, talking to each other, and they enrich every language. In English, why it's so popular? It seems to be well. First of all, there's amazing. There's almost no rules. Like there are lots of rules, but it seems to be the very easy language to learn. I mean, everyone can learn English basically in a couple of years to the basic levels to be able to understand other people. Not everyone, because there's some deep dyslexic and people with some difficulties, whatever. But essentially, yeah, it's easy to learn, and it includes all other. Yeah, I guess in 100 years, now we have the internet and language. Now, what's going on with language is unimaginable. But in 100 years, English will lose its own like uniqueness. There will be so many variations of English, and many people will just, will speak English and will not understand each other. Since Russian English, for example, will be a completely different English from French English and German English, and there won't be like real English. Since maybe it will be destroyed, like the entire language through that. But the point again, see, like my idea of thinking about languages. So you basically have a concept, then you use this concept, you try to describe what's going on. It helps you to see clearly the relationship between things in the world, between people, between nature, whatever. And then you use it. And then maybe even better than the concepts which you inherited from your language, essentially, from your environment. So strong in linguistics. Why it's so? When I was reading Nietzsche first time, 2013, when I got acquainted to his ideas, his sets of ideas, and when I studied a little bit about his biography, his life, I was thinking, in his latest books, he wrote about philology, basically dismissing it, saying that like linguistics, I spent so much. And in this time, it was called philology. It wasn't linguistics, and he basically studied ancient languages like Greek and Latin. He taught Greek at university, and he was 24, I guess. But what I want to say is that when he wrote his latest books, he said that I've spent so much time studying linguistics, and it was useless. Instead of like studying all these, words and stuff like metaphysics, philosophy. No, he didn't dismiss philosophy. He dismissed linguistics and philology, saying there's so many words, so many concepts, but I am a sick individual, and instead of studying, I had to study medicine, physiology, something real. Like he said, there are lots of there are so many concepts. He called them like idols, or idealisms. In like I had so many idealisms, but there was no realities in me. Like that's how he described his experience. And now I see that, and I was influenced by this. Basically I studied his entire life, so I read all his books and some autobiography and some other reviews, and so I was thinking, yeah, this is not like studying languages. It's something, it's not noble. It's not useful. So studying science is great, but studying language, it's all about just words. And yeah, I dismissed language I used it, of course, when, I wrote every day. But the point is that I thought that studying language is some kind of, not a sort of magnanimous activity. Like if I seriously study language, I'm kind of scholar, bookworm, whatever. And later, just recently, I would say probably since I started studying English, and when I started doing it much better than it was in 2007, let's say in the last few years. So I had realization much deeper than I would think I could reach in studying languages. So in studying language, I realized something, which is, wow, this is actually the most important thing. Like studying languages, this is much more noble and powerful than studying anything else. Since you may, like, I perceive myself as a kind of poet and philosopher and writer when I was speaking Russian, let's say. And since I shifted to English, yeah, now I perceive myself as a linguist more. So like my identity is still a philosopher. And again, like there's like competing identities, like a poet, a philosopher, a linguist. But essentially philosophy and linguistics now, for me, they're at this current stage of my development, they're not so much different. So philosophy is basically all about thinking and learning how to think. And of course, studying other, thinkers. By other, again, words are misleading. So when I say other thinkers, I basically mean myself. So studying thinking, which was developed through other individuals. But it's not like I don't think that there must be a distinction between others and the self. So I think there's one real, some form of non-dualism. But the point is, again, when you think that, oh, this is another person, like let's say Nietzsche, right? This is another person, I'm a different person, and we're doing some different things. It's not a very good way of looking at things. It's better to say, okay, this is like language, okay? This is the same language. Now it's English, doesn't matter, it's translated from German. And my native language is Russian, and I never read German. But anyway, so the point is that this language, it doesn't matter which words. Doesn't matter even whether it's English, German, Russian, Chinese. It's the same thing, language. Okay, words representing certain things in the world. And when I look at it, it's not just like I study myself, like some experience of myself. Who am I in this case? Oh, I'm the language itself. So I'm this thing, this we call it mind, consciousness, whatever. I prefer now the word language. So I'm a language, and I study my previous stages of development. I study what I was doing before, like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, and how I came up with what I am doing right now. And what am I really doing? I'm trying to understand it through studying previous, and again, it's not previous. It's very misleading to you. Like I can't use a better language. In Russian, probably I will be able to explain it much better. I had been able, yeah, I had been able to express it much better in 2017 but now I don't think I will be able to do that. Maybe after a certain amount of practice. But the idea, yeah, there's no separation in time. So I'm not sitting and studying Nietzsche's works, which he wrote in 1885. So for me, they're present, they're real. So this is like the book is real. I'm doing it like it's not. It wasn't a read. It was on a conventional level. It was written 120 years ago. For me, it's I bring it to present. I bring it to my attention, to consciousness, and this is real. It's in the same time I'm reading this book, and basically I'm studying what am I doing here, not in the past, but here with this language. All right. With that being said, let's go on. Let it be permitted to designate by this expression the belief which regards the soul as something indestructible, eternal, indivisible, as monad, as an atomon. This belief ought to be expelled from science. So he says, let's get rid of it. Yeah, this idea, yeah, and basically he talks about not just the soul, but it's, yeah, and again, soul, see, zoom in, we have soul. Zoom out, we have God. Or we may use a different, yeah, or, yeah, we may use a concept for both of them. So we may unite soul and God in unstanding, right? And use, okay, it's unstanding. Like the connections are, see, point is like in language, for example, you may see it very clear. So let's say, what is the language? Say, oh, there are some words. How you actually separate words? You may say, okay, there's word eat. So what does it mean? To explain what the word eat means, you have to you have to take 5 other words, or, you know, as many as you need, 10 words, 15 words, 2 words. The point is, as soon as you take 5 other words, you have to explain what each of these words means. And then you get more words. The point is, explaining more words, you get more and more words. And you will never reach the point when you say, okay, now there's, let's say, a million words, and they all explain themselves in you know, they don't need other words to be explained. See the point? So you have, let's say you have 100 words, and they all are, they all explain themselves through themselves. But this is not how language actually works. So to explain the entire, like, let's suppose now I'm an artificial bloody intelligence, and I know a billion words of all like languages. Yeah, billion. I mean, it's not 500,000, which English has, but it's a billion. And I know all. Like, let's suppose I can calculate the entire, everything what has been written by humans. So everything what's on the internet, for me, it's I may process it in 1 second. And from this perspective, let's assume that I yeah, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be possible to calculate it in 1 second. But anyway, this is strange. I have to think about it. Like explanation, right? So we have all these like words. Again, we take one word, we'll go further, we'll find lead. What is lead? Okay, let's make an experiment. Okay, let's slow down. Have it, right? I want to just demonstrate how it works. So it used to refer to a thin animal, situation, idea, etc., that has already been mentioned or is already known about, right? And there's countless examples. So we take the word used, right? We put this word here. So used, okay, let's just use, okay? Use, there's other words like if you use a particular tool, method, service, etc. And again, you have, with one word, you have 10 more words. And with each new word, you have 10 more words. But the point is, okay, let's suppose at some moment you reach the point where all these words which you try to use to explain the concept of it, you already know all of them. So once again, what are we going to do? And how much is going to take? It's going to take infinity. For a human being, it's impossible. So the point is 1, 2, like let's say 2 is also 1, 2, 3, an article also. Okay, let's not use articles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 80, right? 80 words. Is there any repetition? Oh, 2, like we don't need these 2, right? Has been already is. Yeah, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, still 80. Okay, 80 words. So we have 80 words. To understand all of them, let's suppose we start to study language just right now. So we want to understand, we started from it. So where we, like, will we get back to it and say, now we know what it is? So there's 18 words. Like each, after each of these words, there are other words. And supposedly there are like 10 words after each of these words. And we may read their definitions. And eventually we'll, like after, say, 1 leads to 10. And 10 leads to 100. And 100 leads to 1,000. So it's like four steps, and we are at 1,000. Another 4 step, and we have 1,000,000 words. So basically, 7 steps. So we make 7 steps from this word, and we have half a million words. 500,000 words, it's the entire vocabulary of English. So if we ask how many words here in English, so we may ask this question: how many words in English? Well, yeah, there's not even 500,000, but we consider doing enough dusting of the dictionary and going from A1 to ZZZVA. However, they're as estimated currently in use in English language. According to Oxford English Dictionary, plus 50,000 obsolete words. Okay, let's say roughly there's 250,000 words according to Oxford Dictionary. Let's take it seriously. 6 steps. So from it to 200, including, of course, they will be necessary to explain the concept of it. From it to all vocabulary in English, we have to make 6 steps. Okay, let's say 7 steps, assuming that some words will be repeated in different, like, for example, an animal, there will be again. Well, let's just check it. See, there's a living creature such as a dog or cat. That is already, we already learned it, right? So insect, plant, bird, fish, or person. Like this, we already learned. We don't need it again, but all these other words, after the situation. What is situation? A combination of all the things that are, we have that, we have things, we have of, are happening, and all the conditions that exist also already was used in previous definitions. So the point is, okay, let's say not 6 steps. Let's say 10 steps. So 10 steps, actually, you get 1,000 million to 1,000 million plus 1,000, right? No, plus 10 million, 100. We get 100 millions in 10 steps if we are doing this. And in this case, we'll definitely get through the entire vocabulary of English. And the point is now, what is the point? Like, will we be able to What was the idea? I got lost. So we take one word. Yeah, the idea is that we won't be able to explain the meaning of that word. Okay, I got lost. I see there was some interesting idea, but I basically got lost. I was talking about understanding and understanding as if it were everything which we can describe in the multiple languages and our ability to understand. Okay, it doesn't matter. So I'll probably rewatch it later and see the point where I lost the track. Yeah, so many calculations. Anyway, still, it's interesting way. So when you look at it, when you try to study words, yeah, they describe each other, right? The words describe. To get to understand one word, you have to. Well, there was just an idea, damn it, and I forgot it. Let's go on. Maybe I'll get it back in the next few minutes and talk about it later. Okay, between ourselves, it is not at all necessary to get rid of the soul thereby, and thus renounce one of the oldest and most venerated hypotheses, as happens frequently to the clumsiness of naturalists who can hardly touch on the soul without immediately losing it. So he says, let's still use this concept, right, in our language. What's really powerful about language I was talking about linguistics and studying languages. So what's really powerful is that when you study linguistics and you study words, you basically can improve your language to the degree when you know exactly what you're talking about. And when you use every word referring to particular experience which you have, not being like all words which you use, you understand all of them. Often people like when they say soul, right? How much time do they really think about soul? Not too much, right? Sometimes people don't think about it at all. Just hear, oh, soul, seems I understand. And soul, of course, it's not it's kind of daily, not a daily word, but we don't hear it often. But there's so many, like half, for example, right? So half, everybody uses this word many times every day. And especially in thinking, you think a lot using the word half. But do you really think about the nature of the word half? Like, how do you really understand this word? Like, okay, there's some relationship between certain, objects. One object has another, and this actually refers to a particular relationship. But again, if you think about it for, let's say, a week, trying to analyze the concept of property or happiness, whatever, you'll see the world, you'll see the nature of relationships between things slightly different from the way how you see it if you don't analyze. Like recently, for the last 2 years, I was studying over 100 different concepts, and I studied them as topics for my speaking club. So essentially what I did, not with every concept, but with many of them, such concepts like freedom, wisdom, justice, confidence, greatness, mythology, intelligence, time, space, energy, boredom, passion, evolution, whatever. Lots of different concepts. So 100 concepts. What I was doing, I basically analyzed them deeply through the studying, not just definitions, but studying articles in Wikipedia, reading a lot about every concept, sometimes reading books dedicated to describe this concept, not only modern books, but books written hundreds and sometimes thousands of years ago, like in case of Aristotle, and studying the concept of courage. And I've realized that when I use the word courage, for example, before, I had very little understanding of the word. But after I got through this analysis, whenever I say courage, I don't actually mean the same thing which many people mean when they say the word courage. So for me, it's different already, since I invested a certain amount of time in studying this. And again, it helps me to think. So whenever I think, whenever I use this concept in my thoughts, I see clearly what I'm referring to. Not so clearly, but often there's the entire set of ideas. It's like comes with this word. So there's certain emotions, certain understanding. And I know that when I communicate with people, usually it's almost impossible to have the same communication, since when I say the word courage, I see that they don't even grasp the 1/10 of the meaning of this word. And again, when you analyze your vocabulary, when it requires just record yourself, that you start talking for 20 minutes, for half an hour, then get through every word which you use in your language, and basically study, then try to study the these words, and that's what it takes. So first you speak, you see which words you use, and the same with grammar and structure. But that's why linguistics is so profound. So you go through your experience, your linguistic experience in depth, and you analyze what actually this word mean for you. It doesn't mean that you should know what they mean for other people, but you have to see exactly what you want to say. It's not just a word. So the point is, you study, for example, foreign language. What's going on? You want to speak, but then when you speak, you actually speak about your experience, and it's mostly conveyed in a native language. And you start talking about your experience, and you use words from your native language, then you translate them in your head, and you come up with some sentences which doesn't match the actual experience. And that's one of the biggest problems in studying a foreign language. It doesn't match your actual experience. But when you analyze words like in this way, doing a deep analysis, then it matches the experience. And sometimes it's not just matches the experience, it describes it even better than you perceive it. So you may, by using certain words, you may do with the experience whatever you like. So let's suppose you're suffering and you want to express some whatever pain, right? You have emotions, there's some pain, and you want to express it. And then you may use like even opposite type of emotions to express pain. Like you may laugh at pain, and you may like really get rid of pain, especially some sort of psychological pains, like depression and all sorts of psychological things. You may just laugh at them and say, "Oh," and thereby transform your emotions and have different experience. Or you may describe them and through like anger, for example. You may basically, if you feel angry or offended or whatever, you just start analyzing what actually is going on, and you start describing, you see the reality, you see what's really happening. And instead of being obsessed with that, you may kind of control your it's in your control. So you may experience the immense pain, but you still may be clear in your mind, like in Aristotelian understanding of clarity. So it doesn't matter what you feel. The point is how you describe it. And sometimes description allows you to get rid of unwanted feelings. But yeah, talking too much, like again, something. What I'm doing, I am integrating the concepts from this paragraph into my personal experience. My purpose is here to talk. If I'm not consistent, it's not a big deal. Sometimes I may get aside. The point is to read this bloody article and talk as much as possible and practice English, practice real conversation. Since, I feel more and more when I talk to people, I see that often there's misunderstanding. There's not often, almost all the time. When I talk to myself or to the camera, yeah, when I talk to myself, there's perfect understanding. So when I talk to myself without the camera, it's not perfect. It's still, there's some difficulties with certain words, and I'm constantly working on improving my language. But yeah, when I talk to the camera, there's still much more understanding than when I talk to people. So it feels like I create kind of more, I create the connection with the internet, with the world itself. So it seems I'm talking to the world, and it understands me more and more, or I understand how to talk to it. But anyway, the point is there's certain resistance in me, which is sort of, maybe self-importance or maybe something else. So I'm aware that what I'm doing is strange and weird, and basically it damages my my self image, let's say. So I know that if I upload it and people watch it, then yeah, they may take me as a crazy guy and say, oh, he's talking for a couple of hours about something that only he can understand, and we can't even follow what he's saying. And there's some, he gets aside all the time. And why does he upload it? What's the point? Like, he can do it for himself, but why he uploads it on YouTube? And well, because it helps me to learn. This is the way how I boost my neuroplasticity. I see that I do lots of mistakes. I see that I'm not able to express my thoughts as clearly as I want to express them. And then next time I'm trying to do it better. So the point is, I feel pain, I feel uncertainty, I feel that it makes me, makes me vulnerable. But I'm not going, this is the real stuff with fear. So this, I'm referring to my yesterday's experience of talking to people about, I wasn't talking, I was listening mostly, and I listened too much nonsense being said. Real fear. So you got there's a failure, but you not run away. You do it once again. Say, okay, let's. Yeah, it's painful. I see I can't do that perfectly, and I've been doing it for years, and it's still not perfect, and still there are lots of embarrassment. But still, I'm not. I want to do it again. I am resolved to. I see the progress, and I think it's possible to make it better. Every time when I started, I aim at getting it better. So I aim at improving my grammar. I aim at improving my pronunciation. I aim at improving my understanding of the materials I work with. And also I aim at being, short and precise. Sometimes it's impossible. Sometimes it's better. Sometimes it's worse. But the point is, again, just an exercise. It's like thinking. It's like meditation. So instead of sitting and thinking about something inside, I basically sit at the computer and think aloud and see how far I may go. And again, today it's not as bad as it as sometimes may be. Yeah, and I know, again, the point is, I see that how hard it is for an average person to understand what I'm saying. But as I said, I'm confident in talking to the machine. So for me, it's the same communication. Now I'm talking to the machine about, let's say, Nietzsche. Right. Next, I go on YouTube and type something like, let's say, or let's just demonstrate what I mean by talking to a machine. Yeah, maybe I just need to use a special word for it, like talking not to the camera, not the computer, but talking to a machine. Yeah, sounds great. So I type something like Nietzsche, Beyond Good and Evil, analysis, right? Yeah, there's Jordan Peterson. I've watched it probably, long time ago. There's a book which I'm listening now. And there's, let's say, this guy, White Gazed, Explain Beyond Good and Evil, all parts, 42 minutes. Yeah.
Reading Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil is a notoriously difficult book to understand. Written in 1886, it has become hugely influential, but also widely misunderstood.
Okay, so now what's going on? I'm talking about it, right? And I've said so many things about this book already. So if all my studying streams, I recorded, it's 17th studying stream. I've already recorded more than 20 hours of videos and like more than 20 hours of talks. And now, if I want to really improve my understanding, so what I can do, I can just go and watch like 20 hours of videos about Nietzsche, about this book, about this one particular book, or about some concepts expressed in these books, in this book. And then I have more talks. And that's the way how I study. That's the way how I communicate with the machine. Well, now, let's suppose that you want to watch this video. How much of it you will be able to understand? Well, you may understand all words, but for me, I'll understand like 10 times more since I already spent 20 hours thinking about this book on my own, see, and memorizing like its parts. And I'll probably will, like, see, the point is, again, it's like communication. It's very profound communication when you have when you gain a real understanding. So first you talk to the machine. First you show your stream of consciousness, your thoughts. Then you go and listen to other guys who prepared videos exactly for the purposes of sharing with others the basic ideas. And the point is that it's now, of course, if I compare, let's say, this video, well, I've heard 18 seconds of it, but I see that it's made in a very let's say elegant way or whatever. It's not elegant, but the voice, the way how the man is going to talk about Nietzsche here, it's probably a written script. So it's not just a spontaneous studying stream as I'm doing here. It's a written script, and he is going to analyze it in a structural way. He is going to talk about all parts as it's stated here. So he'll say, okay, in the first chapter, he talks about prejudice of philosophers, and he'll probably, make some examples, take some quotes and analyze these quotes. He'll say something about them. And again, it's very short and concise. And after, like, I know that in this video, for example, he's doing much better job than I do right here in my studying streams. And if I would recommend somebody to understand Nietzsche, well, first of all, I would recommend they read the book and do studying streams on their own, and only then watch the video. Since if you first watch the video, you'll probably understand very little. It will influence your understanding. But the point, like me here, let's suppose that you want to understand Nietzsche, or you are interested in Beyond Good and Evil, and you discovered my video and this video. Of course, my video will be much worse than this video. It will be much more vague, and my way of explaining the concepts presented in this book will be worse than this one. But again, by worse, I don't mean the understanding, I mean the quality. So this video is prepared. It's like imagine the restaurant. So what I'm doing, I'm basically gathering all the raw materials here, and I'm working with these raw materials, and I'm working in a very kind of rough way, whereas this guy, he like gives you, yeah, and I throw you these raw materials and show, like, look, these raw materials, this is how you can work with them. But this guy, he prepares a real meal, so like it's a very well cooked meal. But again, to understand better, like what I'm doing here, the point is, again, not to listen to me for you. If you're not an artificial intelligence, if you are a human, like the point for you is not to build your understanding of the book and whatever I say. The point is, I'm showing you that it's possible to, no matter who you are, no matter how stupid you are, just by doing this studying streams, by taking some books which you really like, or it shouldn't be necessarily books, maybe some articles, maybe anything, it may be even videos. So you watch a video, then you record the studying stream. You basically talk about it for, and record it on the computer, and then publish it, and then look for materials which are made by other. It's like playing video games. So suppose you play StarCraft. What are you doing? How you want to be the best StarCraft player? Are you going to be able to become the best StarCraft player just by sitting and playing with a computer. Well, no, nowadays, if we have computers as OpenAI presented, OpenAI who beat Dota's champions, like AlphaZero. Okay, let's use chess example. So, is it possible to become the greatest chess player by playing AlphaZero? Probably yes. That's the point. Instead of playing with humans, you play with AlphaZero all the time. If you're able to do that, you will be the best at some moment, or you will give up. But the point is, like, communicating with the machine, you get much more understanding and experience than you get by communicating with average people. Again, what are you doing? Again, you playing, then you see how the best players play, then you play again, then you see how the best players play, you play again. So basically, okay, doesn't matter. I don't want to digress more. I want to finish this article already. The idea is this communication, as I said, it makes me understand better the materials which I'm working with than, for example, conversations with people. So when I have, let's say, I'm working on this speaking club, so I conduct meetings 2 times a week. Once a week, it's a meeting dedicated to a certain topic. Like this week, for example, we're talking about risk. And for me, when I communicate with a machine, so when I record a studying stream on a risk, which I'm going to do tomorrow, I understand better what is risk, how it works, how I use this concept, how it evolved. And I basically see videos also. I watch videos about this concept and understand much more than when I have a conversation with people who basically share some superficial ideas, and they can't go. But again, our purpose is not to reach the profound understanding. Our purpose on the speaking clubs is just to speak English, to communicate in English, to use our English to develop the language, develop like social skills, communication skills, etc. It's not about studying. But for me, the point is, of course, I want to get a better understanding of philosophy, of psychology, of myself, and it's impossible to achieve this understanding, like the quality or the level which I want to get through communicating with people. But through communicating with machines, and again, machines, like here, when I listen to this guy, basically I listen to a person. But for me, it's like communication with a machine. Since I don't interact with the person, I interact with a machine, which gives me, like, it's very hard to describe. I interact with a person, but not with a person, but with a product, with language, with art made by this person. And I also building some sort of art. All right. So, but what was it? Between ourselves, it is not all necessary to get rid of the soul thereby, and thus renounce one of the oldest and most venerated hypotheses, as happens frequently to the clumsiness of naturalists who can hardly touch on the soul without immediately losing it. But the way is open for new acceptations and refinements of the soul hypothesis, and such concepts as mortal soul, and the soul of subjective multiplicity. Yeah, this is so profound. This I remember in 2013. Yeah, the first, like, I read this book in 2013, and before I read Schopenhauer, Kant. Yeah, I was interested in concepts like free will, determinism, and science. What else? Infinity, mathematics, probably. But when I discovered this idea of the soul of subjective multiplicity, when I realized that, yeah, when I refer to me, to myself, it's never the same thing, and it clarified so much. I can't even express it. So it helped me to quit smoking, for example. I was smoking for 15 years. So from early age, I started smoking from the age of 8, and it was a stupid habit. I want to, look as an adult. I want to look more, cool. I want to look cool, and this coolness basically cost me my health. Now I have very poor health in terms of, I have lots of problems with my health, which which stemmed from my careless childhood. And for 10 years, I was I was smoking from, I would say, well, from 95 to 2007, 12 years, not 94, from 94 to 2007, 13 years. That's actually the first time when I tried smoking was 1993. But anyways, the point is, when I realized that there are certain parts, and now I use the word behavior. It's better for me to maintain this understanding. So it's like there are certain behaviors, there are certain parts in me, and some of these parts, it's not me. I may just I may add new parts, and I may, get rid of other parts. And when you think about your habits, for example, not as your habits, but as your identity about the part of your, let's say, soul of subjective multiplicity. So about the multiplicity, it's much easier to get rid of this part of yourself. Say, okay, this is not me. I'm not a smoker. I do not smoke. I don't need it. Yeah. And it's also useful to think about it when you have all sorts of addictions, not just smoking, but any type of addiction. So the problem is you can't quit because you still identify with this whatever feeling, this experience, this mind state, which is made when you expose yourself to your addiction. But as soon as you change it, like you're on this level, so when you basically transform your identity and say, okay, it's not me anymore. The same what I'm doing here is like whatever I was saying 5 years ago, 4 years ago. You may look my videos, you may check out videos which I recorded 2017 in English, like my first attempts to speak to the machine using the internet and the camera. Just listen to what I'm saying there. I can't say anything. And now it's not me. It's just the person, just the current state of development of this person. Now it's after 5 years, I'll get back to this video, and maybe not to exactly this video, but I'll get back and probably write some comments, which I'm doing with my previous videos sometimes. So I just watch them and damn, like it's not me, it's you. That's the point. I often have this idea at the speaking club. So there are many people who come on a regular basis, and often it's very hard to listen to what they're saying. And I try to persuade people to study language. I mean, seriously study. And I wouldn't say that I'm so successful. Probably I'm not successful. They come to the speaking club, but they don't want to study anything. But this idea of showing my videos, which I recorded like 4 years ago, 2017, and making people suffer from listening to like 5 minutes or 10 minutes of this speech, and then saying it's not you think it's me, it's you. This is how you speak. This is your language, and there's a way how to get from there to here. This is the way how to improve your language. Just speak more and practice more, and understand that you're communicating with the machine, that there's a way how you can communicate with the machine, that you don't need to study anything. You don't need to go in university or to pay some gurus or teachers who are gonna tell you what to do and how to do that. You find what you want to study. You talk about it for like half an hour a day, You record whatever you say. You analyze your speech. You analyze words which you use. You analyze your grammar. Then you go and listen to people who talk about the same thing, right? That's Cecil, by the way. This is an amazing lecture on Friedrich Nietzsche. I guess, well, if I'll be fortunate, in 10 years, I'll learn to speak like Wes Cecil. In 10 years. Wes Cecil is amazing. Not in everything. It's like his analysis of Marxism, for example, is such a... Anyway, yeah, but Nietzsche, like this lecture, well, maybe I admire him because he made me laugh so much. This is so hilarious to listen to Wes Cecil and Nietzsche. It's, yeah, whenever I want to, I listened this lecture probably 3-4 times, but yeah, I always had laugh, a lot of laugh, and probably there were not so much understanding, but like this is the guy with whom I probably enjoy to talk like a lot. I mean, if there's an opportunity to talk to Wes Cecil, I'll probably talk to him like 2 hours every day at least. We will find so much interesting in common. But anyway, okay, of course, what am I talking like? Wes Cecil. I don't worship anybody. Wes Cecil is a fool. But the way is open to the new acceptations and refinements of the soul hypothesis and such concepts as moral soul and soul as subjective multiplicity and soul as social structure of the instinct and passions. This is where, like, all these, like, if you have a word for this, and I have a word, like it's not a word for me, I use the concept of inner government. So inner government, that's basically a soul as social structure of the instincts and passions. So this inner government for me, and I'm trying to do something to to make it less corrupted than it is at any moment when I look at it. And Freud, by the way, yeah, later I read Freud in 2014, and he had the same. It was the Russian term "психические группировки," but in English it's like psychic bands or psychic groups, like группировки, basically. Yeah, we use it also to refer in Russia. We use it to refer to some organized bands. But yeah, it's basically about groups, right? Psychic groups. The same, I guess, Freud borrowed a lot from Nietzsche and Schopenhauer. And basically, this idea of soul as social structure of the instinct and passions, it's basically a Freudian idea of psychic groups. But the way is open again for new acceptations and refinements of the soul hypothesis and such concepts as moral soul and soul subject multiplicity and soul as social structure of the instincts and passions want henceforth to have legitimate rights in science. In Freud, of course, don't have a concept of soul, but you have a concept of conscious, unconscious, and super ego, and unconscious. And this is the social structure, right, of instincts and passions, and super ego as a kind of control mechanism imposed on them. In that, the new psychologist is about to put an end to the superstitions which have hitherto flourished with almost tropical luxuriance around the idea of the soul. He is really, as it were, thrusting himself into a new desert and a new distrust. It is possible that the older psychologist had a merrier and more comfortable time of it. Eventually, however, he finds that precisely thereby he is also condemned to invent, and who knows, perhaps to discover the new. Yeah, basically, I guess Freud, yeah, there are lots of talks about psychoanalysis, and people, at least in my experience, I had not so many talks, but I had experience of communicating with people who studied psychology. And what's interesting, it's not just about communicating with people outside. It's also like listening to people who talk about Freud on the internet and listening lots of lectures. And it seems that there's like who study psychology, they don't go deeper and they don't study Nietzsche. Freud is basically Freud is well some some kind of evolution of Nietzsche, as Jung, as other psychologists. And it's like the same line as Kant, Hegel, Kant, Fichte, Schelling, Hegel, Feuerbach, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche. Yeah, Freud like just goes forward. Yeah, but Freud, in terms of artistic powers, he is just a newbie. His language, his style, his conceptions. Yeah, like compared to Nietzsche, Freud is just a child, and Nietzsche a professor. But not because their ideas are different, but again, the master, like Freud didn't master language, like at least in written form. Perhaps he was a great analysis. He listened lots of patients talking some nonsense, and he talked to himself probably so much and thought so much. But his books and his ideas, like the form, his style, it's not worth. I've read few books, and maybe some of his books are deserve consideration, but most of it is just crap. Whereas Nietzsche, yeah, like I suppose that let's make some predictions. So if internet is still around in the next 500 years, probably nobody will remember Freud. He'll still be there as in summaries of some professors. So they will say, okay, this Wikipedia article on Freud, and this is what he was doing, and these are the books he wrote. And very few people will actually read his books. But in case of Nietzsche, like no matter how many summaries there will be, no matter how many lectures people will make on Nietzsche, like this, like Beyond Good and Evil is going to be read in 100 years, in 500 years, in 1,000 years, in 10,000 years, as Bible is read now. But no, it's like now it's not so popular, but still people read Bible, and there are lots of people who really study it in depth. The same is going to happen with Nietzsche, like with Aristotle. Now we have Nicomachean Ethics, and we still read Nicomachean Ethics after 2,500 years. And probably in the next 2,500 years, people will still read Nicomachean Ethics. But to read, for example, whatever Freud wrote on dreaming, interpretation of dreams, no, this book will not sustain a few hundred years. But anyway, so I've done with, I'm going to analyze the last sentence. I've already, I'm already exhausted. I see that I'm talking for almost 3 hours. And that's perhaps enough. So we'll see what's going to happen next time. Now, what I'm going to do, and since this is a real conversation with a machine, I also give some promises, right? So there are many ways of using language. So now I may let's take Searle's taxonomy. So there are assertives. So I claim something, that this is true or false. There are directives, like commands. So I say that you have to you have to study linguistics to better understand yourself. So this is a command, even though it may be made in a not in a. I'm saying this, but I'm basically saying to myself. See the idea? So I'm talking to myself, and I assume that there may be some listeners, but I assume that probably none of them will understand anything, and still, but those who will understand and who will listen, it's the same thing as myself. So in this case, I say you have to study linguistics deeply. It's basically I'm saying it to myself. I'm not saying it to somebody else. But you, if you listen to this video, you may use it as a command also, like, oh, this this is a nice, advice to study linguistics in depth. And of course, it's not just about, then there's an explanation, what should you do? Studying streams, not necessarily doing it with Nietzsche, but with any other, literature works or videos, whatever you like to do. The point is, again, communicating with the machine, like linguistic communicating with the machine, analyzing the main concepts, analyzing your own language in details, like taking words which you use more often and basically dedicating a week or a month to analyze just this one particular word. So directives, then there are commissives, I guess. Yeah, and these commissives are actually promises and all sorts of, I'm not sure that I used the exact directives, assertives, directives, commissives, exclamations, but no, expressives, yeah, expressives and declarations. So now when I use kind of both. So in this case, like when I speak, and assuming that I speak to the machine, or in the same, I speak to myself, or I speak to unstanding, and assuming that there are five ways I can use language. So basically, what I'm doing, I'm saying to myself, okay, this is what you have to do. This is what I know. This is what I know. This is what I have to do. This is what I'm going to do. Like, I don't give a promise. I don't say I promise to memorize this article next time. But when I say I'm going to memorize this article, and again, I publish it on the internet, and I can't. Then I have an extra motivation to really do that. So for me, it's kind of categorical imperative. If I said that, no matter whether I said it to somebody else or whether I said it to the machine, I use the machine as a hearer. So if, like, if I say that I'm going to do something, one case you may think, oh, I'm going to, tomorrow I'm going to study language for an hour, right? I'm going to write something, and then tomorrow comes by and you say, oh no, I'm not ready, I don't want to do that, let's do it next day. But when you say it to the machine, when you communicate this, it creates in you, like, it changes your attitude towards the action. So in my case, when I say I'm going to memorize this paragraph, like, what am I going to do? I'm basically creating a program for myself. I'm creating the future for myself. And then when I'm actually when I follow the program, it feels natural. It feels as if, it's inevitable. I can't just allow myself not to do that. And it's not just providing me with, it's not just provides me with an extra motivation. It basically strengthens my language, strengthens my intention. So whatever I say must be true, must be accomplished if it's commissives, right? And if I say something to somebody else, if I give some directives, it's basically I give them to myself, not to somebody else. The same I'm doing in the speaking club, though people, like, perhaps nobody understands it. So I often, like, say something like, okay, guys, this is a great opportunity. You have this experience every week, and you may write down our conversations afterwards. So you may go home, sit for half an hour, and think about what was going on, try to summarize what happened, what we discussed. And almost no one does it. Almost no one. Maybe no one. I don't know. But maybe somebody does it, but nobody discusses it, certainly. And like in my case, when I say that, I go home and I do that, and I feel as if it's like the most natural thing to do. I have pleasure. I want to do that. Exactly, because before I just trying to persuade somebody else to do that. The same with language. So when you try to teach other people language, you basically teach yourself. You develop, like, when you say you have to do that, then you, like, if people don't do that, it doesn't matter. You do it yourself. That's what's really important here. So, and what am I going to do? I'm going to memorize this paragraph, perhaps today, maybe tomorrow, but in a few days. to be sure. And then, so I rehearsed it for a couple of days, and then I recorded next studying stream on the next week. And I'm going to start the next studying stream from reciting these paragraphs from 10. So I'm going to start from here, recite it from my memory, 10, 11th, and 12, and go. And the next paragraph is going to be short. Yeah, and then analyze the next paragraph. Anyway, so it was nice to talk to the machine. I guess it's time to stop.